Exactly 1 month ago, I bought this BMW M3 and immediately took it on a road trip, which was mostly successful.
The engine warning light has come on.
We have gained 2 new dash lights.
And in today's video, I'm going to share with you everything I've learned about the car in my first month of owning it. Everything I like about it, everything I don't, and maybe not surprisingly, everything that's wrong with it.
So let's get started and hit the road. Now, an M car isn't just a top trim level with more buttons on it and shiny bits. It is an outright performance car, and therefore it ought to feel special every minute you're driving it. And after owning this car for a month now, I'm pleased to say this one does. From the moment that the 3.2 litre straight six engine fires up, it just has a presence that is always there. Through the sounds, the vibrations, everything you feel through the car tells you that you're in a real top-end Bavarian performance car. And that's a sensation that just resonates through the rest of the car. The steering is really sharp and gives you full confidence if you want to go into a corner and push it a bit hard. The same with the brakes. They're firm and you get a lot of feedback through the pedal. The suspension is firm, but not too firm that you need to visit a chiropractor after a long road trip to Croatia. In fact, the only downside I have to the driving experience of this car is actually the gearbox. It feels quite notchy changing gears, and I don't know if it's because this is a high mileage car. It's done over 140,000 miles, but it's something you constantly think about every time you change gear. You look down and you actually feel it go into the gear rather than just doing it subconsciously. But I'll forgive it, it's an old car. And while I'm down there, window switches. On most cars, they're on the door. So when you pull up to a drive-through or a toll booth, if you're on the motorway heading through Europe, as I was, you naturally just expect the buttons to be on the door, but they're down here. And the fact they're on the opposite side of the gear stick also means that you can't open both windows at the same time easily. Small gripes, but things that I've noticed. And there are two things I'm really not going to critique this car over. One of them is features. It's a 24-year-old car, so if I wanted a car with loads of gadgets and toys on it, I would have just bought a modern car. This, for me, is all about the driving experience. And although the car's got 343 brake horsepower, I don't find myself pushing it too hard. It is an old car, but it's nice to know it's got the power to get me both in and out of trouble, should I wish. And now onto all of the faults that I've found with it.
In no particular order now, starting with the windscreen, which as you can see has got a completely perished outer seal. Not only that, but there are 2 previous stone chip repairs in the glass, so I think the easiest thing to do here is just to replace the windscreen, as a new screen comes with a new seal. I'll get that done at a later date. The first task for today then is to refit this roof rail, which came off the other day in the car wash.
Let's go.
Pretty simple this one, just clips into place. Done. Now onto the inside. The next thing is this air vent, which as you can see is broken here in the top corner. Now you might wonder why that is such a big problem for me, given it is an old car and it's going to have lots of little faults like that. The truth is, it's in my direct line of sight as I'm driving, so I can see it every day and it does bother me, which is also why I don't just want to glue it back together, I want to fix it properly. So I bought this replacement for €25 off eBay. So let's get it swapped out. I started by removing the carbon trim. I could then access the screws to release the radio, although as you're about to see, I struggled to get it to move away from the dashboard. That made it difficult removing the vent, and I actually broke the vent to get it out. But not to worry, as it was going straight in the bin anyway. Eventually, after a battle, I managed to get it free. Then I just had to release the adjustment cable, at which point I could swap the vent for the new one and basically reverse the process. The radio's back in now, the trim is back on, job done. Now I've fixed the vent, the next thing I want to investigate is the engine warning light. Now since the road trip I've had several lights come on and off the dashboard. I've had ABS, TPMS, I've had a red brake warning. They've all gone off now by themselves, but the engine warning light remains. So let's plug in and look into it. Scanning the car identified 2 DTCs, both relating to the catalytic converters, so I asked Grok for help. Now it is possible that it's the oxygen sensors or something else, but it is highly likely to be the cats themselves, as this is an old car. So not an immediate cause for concern today, but something that needs to be taken care of. So for now, let's get on with the other jobs. Starting with the right-hand washer jet. I thought it could have been blocked, so I tried to clear it with a pin. But as you're about to see, it didn't make a difference. So what I'm actually going to do is just swap it with a new jet at a later date. Now time to get it over to Cedric's to see if we can get the scratches out by giving it a good polish, and also to see if we can find out why the parking sensor has fallen inside the bumper. We decided to first tackle the parking sensors, so we jacked the car up from the central jacking point. We then placed axle stands underneath, and then once they were both in place, lowered the car down onto the stands. Once they were down, we checked that the car was secure before continuing to remove the wheels. Cedric stepped in to start removing the bolts, and then once he was done, I stepped in to remove the wheel. Then it was time to remove the wheel arch liners. Pretty straightforward, just a few fixings holding them in place. Into the boot now, or trunk if you're American, and I first had to remove these side pieces so I could access the fixings that were holding the bumper to the car. So I then grabbed a ratchet spanner and a 13mm socket and started removing the nuts. There were 3 on the left side and 3 on the right side. And once I'd removed them all, Cedric and I were then able to remove the bumper. As we removed it, we had to disconnect each of the parking sensors one at a time, being very careful not to accidentally tug on the cable and do any more damage. Once all 4 were disconnected, we were easily able to remove the bumper from the car, and then start investigating what was going on with the parking sensor. And it wasn't looking too great.
So what I think has happened is somebody's removed the bumper and pulled on the harness, and it's pulled the parking sensor out of the bumper. As you can see here, there's been adhesive all around the parking sensor and the bracket has broken away. Now, I think from BMW in the factory, they've glued this onto the inside of the bumper, which would be a perfectly normal manufacturing process. So what we're going to do is just clean this surface up on both of the middle parking sensors and bond it back onto the inside of the bumper.
So I then mixed a 2-part epoxy and then applied it to the sensor, being very careful not to get any on the exterior painted surface. I then offered it up to the bumper and held it in place by hand for a couple of minutes, before then leaving it for an extra 30 minutes to completely set. So we then offered the bumper back up to the car. Again, being very careful not to cause any damage, and one at a time, we reconnected the parking sensors, making sure they were fully clipped in position. We then slid the bumper into its final position, making sure everything was in place, as we didn't want to have to remove it again. We then put the 6 retaining nuts on the car, and once they were secure, we were then able to put the wheel arch liners back in place. Pretty straightforward, they easily went back into position and just a few nuts securing each one. Almost done now, time to put the wheels back on, and once the bolts were hand tight, we then jacked the car up again, removed the axle stands, and then lowered the car to the ground. And now for the final and maybe most important step, torquing the wheel bolts to 120 Newton meters. As you can see, I'm torquing opposing bolts in a circular pattern, and I do each bolt twice, clicking once on the torque wrench. Once I've done that and I'm satisfied all the bolts are torqued, then we can officially say it's job done. And I'm pleased with that. Both parking sensors now back in position.
Well, I'm glad that's done, and however long that clip was that you just saw, it took about 120 times longer to actually do the job. We've been working on the car for about 4 hours, and okay, we took a little break, but that's still a long time, and that is real sweat that you can see on my t-shirt. However, the parking sensors are now refitted, and this is the first time in the BMW, for me, that they are working. How cool is that? Right, onto the polishing.
We started with the wheels, as they were looking quite dull and in desperate need of a polish. Now these wheels are machined, not painted, so we used a wet Scotch pad to brighten them up, and then once they'd been rinsed and left to dry, I applied polish by hand to protect them, at which point they look much better than before. Next, we tackled the paintwork, starting by masking all the areas we didn't want to get polish on. Then, Harris started to work his magic, starting with the bonnet, or hood for any Americans. I then decided it would be a good idea to rehydrate, while Cedric and Ibrahim got to work on a well-deserved barbecue. After that, we moved towards the rear of the car by polishing the rear body side. As you can see, we masked the seal around the rear window, as seals are notorious for getting polish stuck in them. Once that was done, the car began to really take shape, and then we moved on to a more intricate part, the boot lid. And I must say, I'm very grateful to Harris for doing this for me. He made it look easy, and I'm sure I would have made a ton of mistakes doing it myself. The last thing to do was the headlights, and this made such a difference. It really transformed the car. And that's it. The car is done, and I must say it looked pretty special sitting next to Cedric's Alpina. Now let's see the finished product out in the daylight. And what a difference a few hours has made. The paintwork was already in really good condition considering the car's age. And now it's polished and we've started fixing a few of the other issues, I'm really starting to enjoy owning this car. So plenty more to come. And that brings me to the end of this video. The next thing we need to do is to get the car off these UK plates and officially registered into Germany. There's no point returning the car to the UK as it is left-hand drive and it's actually originally registered in Germany. It was first registered here. So essentially, I'm bringing it back home. So I've got to go through that process next. And then I've got to decide what to do with the car after that. The reason I say that is I bought the car for £18,000 in the UK. However, here in Germany, this car in original spec, even with over 140,000 miles on it, is worth around £25,000. So if I continue doing little bits to it, I think it might be worth selling the car on, not necessarily just to make a profit, but just to try something different. I've already done a road trip in this car and I've really enjoyed it. Also, by then, it'll be approaching winter time, and the winter in Germany is pretty rough, particularly here in Berlin. It's not like the UK where you just get a little flutter of snow now and again. You do generally get heavy snowfall and long periods of icy roads. So I'll be using the RS4 in the winter and be keeping this off the road. So maybe I sell it, maybe I keep it. Find out in the next videos. But for now, I'm going to do what I always do on a Sunday, which is head to a Cars and Coffee. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.